granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello. Madeleine Thomas has several bank accounts. One is for her startup business, and she's called that business Image Angel. It's a clever tech that puts a trackable digital watermark on online images so that image thieves could be identified and caught. She came up with this idea after she found that someone had been distributing unauthorised pictures of her. This has huge implications for a lot of women who find pictures of themselves, sometimes very much digitally altered, being circulated on porn sites. So she applied for a business bank account specifically with a Barclays unit that gets government support for startups. What happened next probably won't be much of a surprise to people who follow my channel, but it certainly was a surprise to Miss Thomas. And I'm Granniopteryx. Please like this video, please share it, please subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell. That helps keep the subscription going on YouTube, which tends to drop them occasionally. If you want to help me financially, that's lovely. All the links are in the description, but actually clicking like is the best thing you can do for the channel itself. Right, let's talk about Miss Thomas and her OnlyFans account. So, you see, Madeleine Thomas applied for this business bank account with a unit run by Barclays that gets government support. That is, subsidies. And it's there to help startups start up. By subsidies, I of course mean money that comes from the government, and that means the money comes from us. So in effect, taxpayers are helping to subsidise these startups. I don't object. It sounds like a great idea, but it does mean that Barclays is using our money. And that means we have a right to know what they're doing with it. Well, what they're doing with it is exercising their own idea of morality. Barclays, a banking organisation who has financial fingers in all sorts of pies that you or I might consider somewhat distasteful, but legal and business is business. But Barclays has taken against Madeleine Thomas's startup business account for Image Angel because she has another bank account, and that bank account takes in her earnings from OnlyFans. Yes, indeed, Miss Thomas performs for the camera in what we might term an adult sort of way, and Barclays have now decided that she is therefore too immoral to bank with them. Barclays not only refused to proceed with her Image Angel account, they also closed another account, the one she used for domestic expenses, including the nursery fees for her child. At this point, I have to remind you all that the Financial Conduct Authority explicitly warned banks that they cannot deny services to those working in the sex industry. And the fact that the Financial Conduct Authority felt obliged to put this into writing, to my mind, means that this sort of thing is happening across the board and all the time. This is what they said. You cannot refuse banking services solely because someone is a sex worker. If you have specific evidence-based concerns about exploitation or illegality, investigate those individual cases. Blanket refusal is likely unlawful discrimination. Unlawful. So what Barclays have done is actually unlawful, although I doubt that an institution of that size will face many repercussions, and that's the problem. When an institution gets too big and powerful, the people in it start to think that it's okay, in fact it's their duty to play God. And I've been talking about the BBC, and it's a similar sort of situation. And in this case, the banking case, it doesn't apply only to sex workers. We all have the example from a few years ago when that tower of probity, Coutts Bank, debanked Nigel Farage because someone there didn't like his politics. Not the whole bank, just apparently one person or one division just took a dislike to him. Has Coutts suffered? No, I shouldn't think so. This is a truly awful, well, you could say Orwellian situation. I'm not talking about the rights and wrongs of Madeline Thomas's way of earning a living, but I am talking about the problem of individuals in banks, maybe even other institutions, imposing their political opinions or morality on their clients, and all under the shelter of the institution for which they work. What next? Vaccine skeptics? Climate change dissidents? People who own dogs? Now, obviously, in the case of sex workers, there's always the possibility of exploitation, but there are very definite ways of dealing with that and finding it out. For instance, there are a number of different ways of checking that the client has control over his or her account. And in such cases, there are certainly questions to be asked, but that should be as far as it goes. A bank has no right to decide on the morality of its clients. When you think of the number of banks that hold money for the worst dictators and exploiters in the world, and they pick on somebody like Madeline Thomas. All the banks should be concerned about is what they're doing is legal in the country where they're based, and that they aren't being exploited. Now, up to this point, I've been talking about sex workers and politicians, which some people might suggest there isn't any difference. But it's not just that category of a somewhat calumnied society that this sort of thing is happening to. It doesn't stop there. A couple of videos ago, I was talking about a fellow called Patrick Lee, who was suspended and therefore effectively rendered unemployable from his professional association, not a bank, but the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. Mr. Lee was an actuary of some 30 years experience. They took the Faculty and Institution of Actuaries took this step because a member of their board objected to Mr. Lee's trenchant and publicly circulated opinions about Islam. Yeah, so that's a religious dissident. I said in that video that this sort of make up a law and then enforce it, it's a dangerous tendency and a habit that's gripping all sorts of our institutions, not just the banks. Yeah, a bunch of actuaries. And they are, in effect, doing the dirty work for a despotic government. Governments don't need to make laws when institutions like this are going to make up their own and apply them on their own terms. And, I'm not sure how we're going to stop that. There are so many of them with this feeling that they're big and powerful and they can tell other people what to do. It's a bit like, the story of the Hydra. You cut off one of the Hydra's heads and two more grow in its place. And, perhaps this tendency, this strange tyrannical way of doing business is something our lawmakers should be looking into. That's far more dangerous for any democracy than any climate change flim-flam. And if any government is interested in preserving what's left of our democracy, they should be thinking about how to deal with something like this. All right, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.